early finish on the rota today, which leaves me with 2 or 3 hours before our escort arrives. This is a final, just about legible, segment of the journal, and I can't help but have a strange feeling after reading it. There's a handful of disquieting notions in my head, but I'll save them for after. It's best to read this first. What is, in effect, a surrogate denouement. That said, there's no resolution to be had. No convergent threads. There's no satisfying conclusion for this dismissal tome of events. Whatever the case, it's up to the reader to draw their own meanings, whatever you see fit. The storm. There's one more thing I find worthy of putting on paper, and that is the storm. It happens at random, according to Kurt. There's no pattern to its visits. I've only witnessed it twice in my time here. The first time it swirled on the distant skyline, I found myself totally wrapped in its magnificence. A terrifying sight to behold. We'd been imprisoned in a night that must have lasted at least 2 or 3 years, relatively speaking. And in accordance with the darkness, the only light being the bruised, moonless firmament, it took a while for the black clouds to register, congealing across the waters. Well, it wasn't hard to notice after deep crimson flushes lit up in its bowels. Pulsing vermilion glimmers, so full of energy I could feel heat wash over my face from across the waters. That heat grew into a roiling whirlwind as the storm neared. The others were quick to stir from their meagre shut-eye when they too felt it. "The hell's that?" Nia stammered, evidently as clueless as I was.
"Oh, no. No, please God, no. Not again,"
Kurt croaked. Guys, what's happening? What is that out there?" I asked. "Storms are coming." We all turned to Iago, in sync. Those were the only words he'd spoken since he returned from the blobbers, and the mere sound of his voice came as a shock. We pressed for details, but he'd already sunken bark to his dead-tongued dejection. Kurt was no help either. He just shivered and stared, paralytic, into the churning depths of that stormhead. I'll be honest, after the storm drew nearer and pattering rain replaced the snow, a certain excitement overtook me. Inky blots darted across the flashing lights deep in the storm clouds, captivating me in awe. I threw my head back and opened my mouth, allowing the rain to spread its warmth across my tongue. It felt heavenly. The sensation of warmth, after so long deprived, was like nothing I'd felt before. The euphoria was short-lasting, and concern replaced it as the raindrops turned scalding. When they started to burn and sizzle off my face, I flinched and dove back under cover. Before long, the air was an all-encompassing haze of steam. It was like we'd just entered some malfunctioning steam room. Each breath brought with it a flaring heat that spread from my lungs to the rest of my organs. Funny, isn't it? In winter, it's cold and dreary, and you wish it was summer instead. Then when summer rolls around, the beating sun and stifling nights make you yearn for the cooler seasons. In that boiling cloud, I begged for the cold to come back. At least we could layer up in coats and pants. There's nothing to be done about the heat. You can't exactly take your skin off when it's too hot. Momentary relief came as cool trickling steams from above. My relief was sorely misguided when I understood what it was. Meltwater. Minor runnels quickly inflated to a formidable downpour. Then into a violent rapid. Nothing could be heard over the roar of rushing water. Blind, breathless, and panicking, I reached out for a hold. My fingers wrapped around metal, a pole driven into the ice. I held on with everything I had. There was a thump beside me. A gargled shriek. Eleanor. Despite my total exertion to keep from being swept away, I outstretched a hand. "Ellie! Here, grab my hand!" I screamed, a candle in the wind, to the rapids. Without delay, I felt her slippery fingers intertwine with my own. I heaved. It felt as if my spine would snap right there and then. I just didn't have the strength. The cold torrent sapped all the excess energy from my muscles.
"Help me!"
Following the cry, I barely made out the figure of Kurt, clinging helplessly to a torn canvas. The steam swallowed him up again, and my stomach knotted when a harsh tearing noise scraped my eardrums. In total uncut despair, I watched as Kurt plummeted past the platform and out of sight. And, as if on cue, Ellie's fingers slipped away. My heart felt as empty as my palm. Her screams faded from my ears, replaced by the incessant torrent. I don't remember the wait following, only the waterfall suddenly abating, giving way to familiar grey murk hanging in the sky. Kurt and Eleanor were gone. In any other situation, I might have found solace knowing they'd drowned, or perhaps even died on impact with the ocean. Of course, that was out of the question. We were left knowing with absolute certainty that they were going through unimaginable suffering, and far more to come, whether at the hands of unseen leviathans, blubbers, or any other nameless things lurking in the depths. It didn't matter. I just hoped whatever found them was vicious enough to tear them apart, digest their bodies into nothing, and allow them to return. A week passed, and Eleanor began to regrow. Another 2 weeks later, Kurt appeared. After their rebirth, we all knew better than to prod. Just leave them be. Let them process it. Let them decompress. Loss may seem a trivial affliction without death, but it would be naive to think of loss as a purely physical separation. Yes, you may be taken away, put through unspeakable suffering, and then be reborn. For lack of a better term, those victims lose some integral part of their being, chipped and whittled away. Something so abstract, so important, yet it cannot be grasped by the hand. Once it's gone, there's no reeling it back. And still, we went on. We had no choice, and fell back on mindless habits for comfort. In a way, we found paltry success in learning what makes this place tick. Trial and error, however awful those trials have been. My thoughts lingered on the storm after it happened a second time. We were seasoned, prepared for what was to come. Making sure our cover was uninfiltrated by the elements, we pulled together ropes and twine, tied them around ourselves, and fastened the ends to various driven poles and stakes. Maybe I'd been too focused on the storm and its sizzling droplets to catch Iago unfastening himself and standing up. A yell from Alexei brought me to attention, but it was too late. Iago, already several paces away, lumbered towards the edge of the platform. We all thought he'd jump, futile as it'd be. He didn't. Instead, he threw off his shoes, socks, jacket, pants, everything, until he stood stark naked, exposed to the elements. At this point, we knew better than jumping up to help. We had no fault in this. He'd come back eventually, after all. Yet, I could sense something changing. I don't know what or when it started, but it was there. A shift, a redirection of energy. Iago howled as his skin bubbled and blistered under the storm's ferocity. I think it was when his skin began sloughing off in great swaths that it happened. Without warning, Iago's entire being burst into a furious red flame, a sparking vermilion plasma crackling with the intensity of lightning. Eyes watering from the heat, I watched transfixed as his silhouette, shrouded in hellfire, seemed to be eaten away into nothing. Not a puff of smoke or steam billowed from him. His backlit shadow disintegrated inch by inch, until the last smattering of fragments were burned away entirely. Absolutely nothing remained of Iago once the storm passed. Not one stray hair or nail fragment. Of course, we expected him to grow out from the ice face. Right away, in fact. Nothing happened. We scanned every last inch of the cliff. Nothing. It's been hell. I can't even guess how long it's been since then. It's also so fucking arbitrary. Meaningless. Could be decades, centuries, millennia. My family might be long dead by now. Hell, humanity could have already gone extinct. And all in that time, I've yet to see even a hint of Yago's return. Maybe he's in another, worse place. Maybe he's dead. Or maybe he made it back home. Those are the only possibilities I can imagine. And as far as I can see, that's a 2 in 3 chance of escaping this place. Escaping eternity. Next time the storm comes around, I think I'll follow that old man's example. Strip down to my most human form, roar for the whole world to see. Well, not completely. I'll be bringing this notebook with me. I'll clutch it tight to my heart as a tempest roars around us. And maybe, just maybe, the rain will set me free. So, here we are. I'm not really sure what to make of this. It's almost like 2 situations bound as one, an unexplainable body and an unbelievable journal. Together, it's like the opposite poles of 2 magnets, pulling together into some cohesive whole. But, as I said in the prologue to this entry, there are still a few things I keep thinking over and over to no avail. According to the journal, the last location I can identify would be Monte Rosa. That's between Italy and Switzerland, over 3,000 miles from here. Even if someone wanted to dump a body, they'd need air transport. There's no roads, not this far out. There's plenty of remote places to bury a body, and here is not one of them. Permafrost starts less than 2 feet down, so you're more likely to break your shovel before digging out a grave. But if there is a third party involved, why would they pose the body? Unless they simply left him here to die. But why? I hear something. I think the chopper's here. I'll see what I can gather from the forensics guys, and finish this afterwards. Wow. I didn't expect them to be so forthcoming. They flicked through the journal and ran a missing persons check on one Anthony Grissall. And it's true. British. Last known location, 11 days ago. Climbing Monte Rosa with a friend. A friend who was also missing. We'd been here 2 weeks, though I only found the body 5 days in, which means the longest period between disappearance and recovery would be 2 days. I'm starting to get a headache, trying to rationalize all of this. And there's something else bothering me too. Is there an old man missing from somewhere in the world? Someone who could be compared to a certain Hemingway character? If so, will he be found? Somewhere cold and isolated, or perhaps somewhere more populated? And if he's found alive, what would he say? What would he recount? In all honesty, I hope these questions stay unanswered. I don't want to know. Whatever he'd reveal to the world does not belong here. It might prove something that should remain in the dark, quiet unknown. A place I've already stepped one misguided foot into.